I think the stereotypical Northwest fisherman angles solely for the purpose to provide table fare. Catch and release is left over for those fly guys and the bass fishermen. Carp is a fish that has always sparked my curiosity. Many times I would see them cruising the shorelines and shallows while targeting trout, or pulling the boat up to the dock at the end of the day. But in our fishery that is predominantly chasing salmonoid species, carp fishermen seem to be outcast as this group who would target these trash fish. If you can't eat it, why would you catch it? My understanding of carp fishing was putting a couple kernels of corn on a bait holder hook and casting it out in some slack water hoping for a bite. And if you did catch one, you were instructed by the other fishermen to throw it up in the bushes behind you on the bank. These fish are not supposed to be here. My pursuit for these fish began in the spring. Pulling up to a boat dock on one of our bigger lakes, I noticed a gentleman with these big, long surf style rods and this weird looking rod holder. He was fighting a fish as we neared him. Out of curiosity, I watched him slowly slide the net underneath the carp, a beautiful specimen, and gently lift it onto a mat that was on the ground. He poured water over the fish and snapped a quick picture before gently lowering it back into the water and letting it swim off. It was at that moment my curiosity got the best of me. If these are such bad fish, then why did this gentleman take such care to make sure that this fish was returned to the water unharmed? That moment began an almost obsessive need for more knowledge on carp angling. I spent countless hours on YouTube watching these Euro style anglers and the different techniques and methods and just tried to understand everything. The rigs and baits that they used were nothing like anything that we had around here. Most of the tackle was non existent in bait shops. But a few Amazon orders later, I had the beginning of my first carp kit. Armed with a few rods, a rod pod that would fall apart if you looked at it wrong, some cheap bait alarms, and a few hair rigs, I set off on my first true carp angling trip. I watched fish rise in the distance. I even watched fish swim on phase underneath the tips of my rods that were extended over the edge of the lake. But carp fishing turned out to be a little more difficult than just going down and flipping out some lines. Upon doing some further reading, I began to learn that carp are incredibly smart and complex aquatic creatures. They have an extremely good sense of smell and taste, and will seek out only food that they feel is nutritional value to them. As I gained more knowledge on these fish, I began to understand some of the things that it takes to be a more successful carp angler. After almost a year of some mediocre success, I met a couple of semi-local people on social media who also shared the same passion for carp angling. Also, their knowledge was much more superior about the sport than mine. We spent a lot of time chatting about techniques, and I began to learn that a lot of the stuff that I've been reading and a lot of the stuff that I watched was not exactly applicable to our Northwest fisheries. Our wild carp are much different than carp that are contained in a lake and fed and raised simply to be caught and released time and time again. Many of our fish up here have never been caught. They've never seen a bait.